Welcome to the Amiga Ireland podcast. I'm Jarlath.
I'm Luke.
And I'm Rob.
Cool. How have you been, Rob?
I'm all right. I made myself a human, so I have a son. So
congratulations!
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Congratulations.
11 days old, and slightly rocky start, but all is good now. And he's happy out at home.
Excellent.
So delighted with that.
Rob 2.0.
That's it, yeah. Have to get him started on the programming and the gaming and all that.
Start slow.
Yeah.
Don't push him too hard.
Yeah, you give him the first issue of your tutorials in Amiga A Future.
yeah. Get cracking on that now.
Yeah, fair play, Rob.
Cheers.
How have you been, Luke?
I've been fine, thank you. I've been enjoying different C64 demos actually from different period of C64 demo scene. You know, from the 80s, from the 90s, and the contemporary stuff. But about the contemporary stuff, we'll talk about later.
Okay, cool. Sounds interesting. I'm just back actually from Seafest, which was just closed this weekend. It was a maritime festival here running in Galway. There were all kinds of things, like you got to go on the research vessels, which were pretty impressive actually. The technology and the computer systems they have. I mean, like the up the top area where the captain and the crew are, it was like the Batcave out of the 1989 Batman movie. Just like walls of monitors showing 3D scans being slowly generated of the ground underneath, and buttons and switches and knobs and all kinds of things all over the place. It was brilliant.
Wow.
Yeah. And there were also flyboarders, which is something I'd never heard of before. Basically, these guys, they can elevate themselves to, tens of meters in the air and do all kinds of stunts and acrobatics. So they had two world champions there, one from Boston and one from New Zealand, and it was seriously impressive. Right, will we go on to the news?
Go for it.
Yeah.
First up is a new e-news reader has been released. It's a program for Amiga OS 4 that allows you to keep track of hundreds of news sources if you want, and have everything all in one place, which is actually quite nice. And the author says he created Newsreader because of his frustration with how bad the existing newsreaders were, such as Feedly and Digreader, never mind Facebook and Twitter. So that's pretty cool. It looks like it's for OS 4.
The good thing is also you can add feeds from Feedly as well, Digreader, and also Facebook and Twitter to e-newsreader. So you can incorporate all of them, which is a really, really good stuff.
So anything that they can read, you can read, and that's very good.
Wow. That's... okay. I missed that. That's amazing.
Very good. It's an OS4 program, but hopefully maybe he could be persuaded to port it to the other platforms. But it's great to see.
Yeah, that'd be great too.
Good one.
Okay, I've got some other news. It's about 15 years ago, I built a clockport splitter back for my 1200, which lets you connect more than one device. And I prototyped it and never went any further than that, because I only ever needed the one. But I finally, there a little while ago, got my act together and made an actual proper card of it. So so I have an actual printed circuit board of it now, which is sort of for more big news for me than for anyone else. But there are a few of them out there now.
Are yours available for sale, Rob? Can people buy them off you?
Basically, there's a minimum amount that I had to build to sort of make it worthwhile getting the board. And so I had 10 of them and I've sold most of them. So there are a few still around, but it's not going to be a continuous product. So that's it. There are a couple left.
Cool. Fair play. So when you're not busy making babies, you're still making hardware and software.
That's it. Yeah.
Rob, I've got a question. What sort of things can you connect actually to your clockport splitter?
Back in the day, I had, this will tell you how long ago it is. It was I had a fast serial port for dial-up internet and a fast parallel port for using printers. So I had them running fine, and I also wanted to use a Catweasel. So that was for accessing all different floppy drives. So this let me use the two of them at the same time. But there are sound cards, there are USB cards, there was an I2C card, which is one for the nerds. That was in development there a while ago. I haven't heard anything about that since, but that was one in particular that I was excited about. And that would provide a sort of an industry standard it's a type of serial protocol, but it's used for a lot of stuff like intercommunication between car device modules and all sorts of modern all-in-one chips have these communication ports on them. So that would be really good thing.
Really handy
if and when that shows up. But there are a lot of things and that you can use. It's nice to be able to connect more than one of them.
Thanks. Right, there's a guy called Pierre Martin, and he goes by the name Cyborg Jeff, and he has released a complete soundtrack for the upcoming game called Power Glove. The game has been mentioned by us in our podcast many times. The Amiga release has been finished and will be available during the summer. If you want to try the C64 version, it is already available to download, to buy it, and I greatly support everyone to try it because it's a really, really nice game. And we will finish this episode with one of his tunes, thanks to his kind permission as well.
Yeah, it's a quality album.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Christoph from Amicast, and also there's another podcast, isn't there? The Polish version he does has a slightly different name, Amiwiglia or something.
Yeah, Amivigilia. It's
Okay.
translates into Ami Christmas Eve.
Right.
Fantastic.
Very good.
It's direct translation because in Poland there were different there was a tradition of naming different events and adding the Ami front, like for example Ami Zaduszki means something like what's the name of it in English when you call it the 1st of November? It's not Ami Halloween, but it's the next day after after Halloween.
Oh, that's news to me as well.
So we have it in Poland. It's the day
Right.
of the dead people. We celebrate
yes.
the memory of dead people.
Mm-hmm.
So it is called like that.
I've heard of that now, but it's definitely not a thing in Ireland.
Okay.
Not
Okay.
that I've ever heard of anyway.
This is one thing, and the party used to be in November, and Ami Majówka is something like Ami May.
Okay.
There's a tradition of calling, so he called his event like that because at that time there were so many events in Poland. So the only time he could actually organize his event was December, Christmas time, and he was at some point he was an organizer of Ami Vigilia, so he just called his podcast like that, Ami Christmas Eve, Ami Vigilia.
That's a great name. Well, I'm a big fan of his podcast, Amicast. I really enjoy it. I always have. And he's come out with an app that runs on all of the different Amiga operating systems that will basically stream his podcast straight into them once you can decode them, obviously.
Very good.
So there are versions for AROS, OS4, Morphos, and I think 68K as well.
You have to have a graphics card.
Okay, yeah, I haven't tried it because I know I can't decode MP3 on my one, but yeah, fair play to him. That's absolutely fantastic. Like,
Maybe we should think about something like that as well. What do you think?
maybe is the source code of his available? And we could
just
change it?
change the address. Yeah.
I think it's been written in Hollywood, actually.
Oh yeah. Well, I was going to say you could just have a go at it with a hex editor and change the address. that's terrible.
That's one way of solving that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you could say it's the classic Amiga way of solving it.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, well done, Christoph. Great app and great show.
Okay, this is an interesting thing. I don't really know what else to call it. It's a bit of magic with JavaScript and and a bit of back-end server stuff. But it's a Pascal compiler for your browser, and it even works in iBrowse 2.4, which is pretty astonishing. Given that it's pretty much predates. Well, it does definitely predate CSS even. But it works. It works with a combination of JavaScript and PHP on the server side, and it lets you edit your code in the browser and then compile it into a working executable, which is, to be honest, a pretty amazing project. So it's there's a URL in the show notes, and it's well worth having a look at.
Good stuff, definitely.
Yep, and next up, there's been a new release of an application called SplitMod. which is a command line tool to split 31 sample tracker modules into a song file and a sample file. So they can be loaded separately into different memory sections within an assembler.
If you're trying to load into different regions of memory, it sounds like it's for coding purposes, because you'd want to try and preserve your chip RAM for stuff that really, really needs it. And if you've got a lot of mod stuff, if you load it all in one go, you take up more RAM than you actually need for the samples.
Well, it's had 153 downloads, so hopefully that's game developers.
Well, hopefully, yeah. I'll have to have a look at that because it sounds interesting, but I haven't read about it myself. Okay, so Icarus Desktop has had a new release. It's 2.2, and it's actually 2.2.1 has been released, and this is just sort of a big improvement over the previous one. Lots of big. Well, no, lots of small changes and a couple of big, bug fixes, and it's generally sort of a big upgrade for anyone that's using or wants a sort of a pre-configured and pre-made Eros desktop. It's a good option, and it's nice to see it's still in development.
Yeah, I ran Icarus in a virtual machine on my desktop, and when you maximize it and all that and make it seamless, it's basically like you're running it on your computer. Mm-hmm. It's really fast. My God, it's so fast. It's
ridiculous because it is. In Amiga terms, slightly heavy, but in modern operating system terms, it is very, very thin and very, very lightweight. It's so good.
Mm-hmm. I got the networking going at one point, and then it wasn't working. I need to figure it out again. But I was able to use Google in the browser. Mm-hmm. Which threw up results really quickly. MESSL isn't built for AROS yet, mm-hmm. so the HTTPS sites aren't available, which is kind of ironic since you can do it in the 64K machines
mm-hmm.
now.
Yeah.
You can read PDFs and stuff really easily, so that which would be a painful job on 68K reading a big bulky PDF.
Yeah.
You can fly through them. So I'm slowly scoping it out, see what degree of productivity could you do on it. It definitely looks fantastic, mm-hmm. and it's fast.
Yep.
Amiga Forever and Commodore 64 Forever version 7 have been released by Cloanto. For anyone who's not familiar with Amiga Forever, it basically what it does is it kind of bundles together some existing software like the Ultimate Amiga emulator. It also then includes the ROMs with licensed copies of the ROMs, which I think are slight variations. I think Cloanto ROMs might be slightly different if I'm right, or they've been upgraded or updated.
As far as I remember, there's a new version of CIC and device, and Workbench library has been removed from mm-hmm. the ROM, and it's been moved to libs folder. So it's a significant change in my opinion, because all of the ROMs they've got the Workbench library in the ROM actually.
The thing is, it like Amiga Forever also includes the older ROMs as well. Yeah. So it's not going to be a limiting factor. But yeah, they did produce a sort of basically cobbled together their own setup, and it's mainly for people who want to use OS 3.1 with bigger hard drives, and that's basically what it does. It fixes the problems around the 4 gigabyte limit, and that's it. So it just makes it just removes a couple of steps there, but that's really kind of what it's aimed at. But for anyone looking for the original stuff, it also has the original ROMs,
which is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they've also bundled in, demos, games, and there are some video footage and interviews and things like that. So depending what package you go for, so it starts at $10 roughly and goes up to $50 depending what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And technically you could put this together yourself with a lot of work and hours. And I know I did do it before in the past, but for the sake of spending $10, I would happily buy this and just run a nicely emulated version where you can pick which version of you want to do an Amiga 4000 or 2000 or whatever, and boot it up and try stuff out.
That's cool, it. It's all set up and ready to go, and it's nice.
Yeah. The new features they've added, there's quite a few, but two that stood out to me. One is that you can boot your PC straight into a particular Amiga model. I think you can possibly do it with the C64 as well, and they've made improvements to the joystick detection and calibration, and they've done some other things as well. So if you've got a Windows computer, you can run this, and you can check that out at amigaforever.com, and I think there's a C64 equivalent site as well.
Another thing that's been released is Voodoo X Archive Browser and Extractor. If you use Amiga OS 3.0 or 3.1, you are pretty familiar with XAD stuff. It's a powerful tool which allows you to extract nearly every and any archive, zip, RAR, LHA, LHZ. So the latest beta was supposed to be lost, but miraculously appeared recently, and I'm really glad it's 2.0 beta 5 version, and I've been trying and I've been running it for a couple of days, and it works fairly decent, and I think it's a good one.
Okay, and also Friend have just released version 1 of their, I'm going to call it an operating system. It actually does a lot more than just an operating system. But so version 1 has been released, as well as the launch of their developer forums. So at this stage now, this desktop, which is delivered to the browser and does so much more than that because it provides interfaces and drivers for all kinds of things. One thing is a kind of a WordPress interface where you can work on your WordPress site via their desktop and file manager. They do some kind of abstraction stuff there. And they've got a lot of APIs and documentations made available. So if you've been curious about this project, now is the time to get on board, particularly if you're a developer and you can play around with developing some software. It's actually quite easy to get a HTML5 app working on it. And then there is loads of scopes and bindings in different languages for whatever tickles your fancy. So the link for that will be in the show notes.
And we've got another game that's been released, and it's called Sam's Journey. We've already mentioned that game in our previous podcast, and it's a C64 game, and a company called Protovision has been taking pre-orders for that game, and it's a great platformer. It's original scrolling platform game for the C64, which huge levels to be explored, hidden items to be found, and secret passages to be discovered. I really encourage you guys to buy this one because it's so colorful you won't believe it's actually a C64 game.
Cool.
Very good. Yeah.
Geez, you sell that well, Luke. I'm definitely going to check that out.
Eric Hogan, known as Eric on the various forums, has started doing some video tutorials for Blitz Basic 2. So he's done the first episode the first part for an episode of Ami 10 TV, where he covered vertical scrolling and the basics of setting up a sort of a 1942 style game. If you're familiar with that, and it's a great game format to start with. So he has previewed episode 2, and it's be well worth a look, where he's covering things like sprites and, sort of collision detection, things like that. So, this is very, very good, and it's nice to have it in a video format as well.
Yeah, it's nice to make that info accessible to people.
Absolutely.
Just because it might get more people involved. I think the early steps, getting your Hello World program and learning your way around the architecture and, whatever it is, the copper or whatever it is, different object models. I think, once people get over the initial hump, things accelerate in terms of, what you get to do and your satisfaction from working and then what you produce.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Let's move on to the gaming section. So Open Bore has been ported to the classic Amiga, and it's a 2D side-scrolling engine. There's video footage online on YouTube you can see, and there's a link to it in the show notes. So Atlantis360, who is from Kansas, put up a post about this. And Bore is Beats of Rage is the game, and which is I think it's like a fan-based continuation of Streets of Rage. It looks absolutely fantastic by Amiga standards. It looks really good. Now you need an Amiga 040 AGA or RTG to play this. You don't need an FPU. Technically, it'll work on an 030 now as well, but he's not optimistic about the results you'll get, but he just put it there, I think, to keep people happy. And I think the people, a lot of the people who I'm seeing running it are doing so on an Amiga 600 with the Vampire 2, and it looks really smooth.
Yeah, it does. It does. Definitely looks impressive, and we're seeing a lot of these, the kind of heavier games, I suppose, and the SDL-based games coming out now with the increase in popularity of the Vampire.
Yeah, I think that the Vampire causes that as well, and I'm pretty sure some good games are coming, to be honest, Just a word of notice as well, OpenBO is also available for MorphOS and Amiga OS 4.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, so there's it's a game that's it's like an open source mobile type game that's been ported to the Amiga by Marissa Giancarla. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Giancarla. And it's a nice video of that in the show notes as well to have a look at. But yeah, it looks very, very nice and polished. And
we've got another port, Mini Slug, a port of Metal Slug for Amiga, and it's been done by Artur Jarosik, and he's been working really hard on different things, regarding Amiga, like a browser, or a lot of different games for the Amiga with Vampire 500 or Vampire 600 equipped, and the game looks pretty good. He in the docs he says that he'll improve it later on, and he apologizes for any bugs and errors. But to be honest, looks great to me. Looks great.
Yeah, it does. It really, it looks the business all right.
Cool. I had a friend who was absolutely addicted to Metal Slug. It was his favourite game of all time, so I must tell him about this.
It was a great game at the time, all right.
At some point, I was addicted to Grizzer. There was a game, if you remember it, on C64. And I think Metal Slug is just like a evolution of that game. Of course, right. Grizzer was a pure copy of Contra from Coins Up and Nintendo. And they probably couldn't use the name, and therefore they called it Grizzer. But anyway, Metal Slug, Mini Slug, both of them worth checking out. Right, and now we move to a section called Discoveries, and we start with Amiga Workshops, which is a series of how-tos, including, for example, a hard reset button mod, and an Amiga using as a router with Miami Deluxe. And the link will be in the show notes, of course. Some of the workshops might be a bit difficult, but if you go through them step by step, you won't have any problems in doing them. The other thing is C64 Sound Expander. If you like creating music on your C64, if you are in the world of MIDI music, you'll find this tutorial and this cartridge very, very useful, and the link will be, of course, in the show notes. And this video has been presented by a guy who goes by a name 8-Bit Guy, actually, and he's got a series of YouTube videos regarding different stuff from the retro world.
Lovely. Well, in IRC on hash Amiga-IE, I've been chatting to Microchip there from Carlo, who just popped in a few days back, and he's been troubleshooting his Amiga 600. So we were going through different testing software, and one of the applications that Microchip tipped me off to is hosted on GitHub, and it's called SysTest. This thing is pretty cool. It totally takes over the screen. So you run it from Workbench, or you can run it from floppy, but it kind of takes you into a almost X-copy like environment where, you know, the rules of graphics have all changed and you're in this new environment. And you can run tests on memory, peripherals, audio visuals, chips, battery, clocks, ports, more than that actually. It's a very comprehensive app, and it's so I got in touch with the author to see, you know, to ask him a bit about it. And he said that his motivation for creating it was just to test Amigas that he takes in for repair and recap, so he can confirm what repairs are needed. So this software is actually being used in the field, so to speak. And he wants to ensure that he sends back a fully working Amiga board. So if this is the application he depends on, you know, it speaks pretty highly of it to me. I mean, it looks the part, but I've only used it so little so far. It's hard to know. But so he wanted a fast loading disk with good coverage of all the basic subsystems. And it kind of hits the spot for him because he says, you know, for many recappers, they're routinely using the disk. He says it's quite complementary to John Hurtle's Diagram project, which is a ROM replacement. Actually, Rob, you mentioned this in a...
I think we did, yeah. We covered it in the last one, maybe, or the one before, yeah.
Yeah, which is better suited, he says, to diagnosing serious faults in known bad boards. So yeah, this is Keir, K-E-I-R, is the creator of this. Memory testing is just one component of SysTest.
It's a fantastic little program. I use it here all the time as well. And Keir he's a great guy and he's very helpful. But some of the stuff it has, like, you know, sort of, you can use it for creating sine waves in the audio circuits to, you know, which is, you know, anyone will tell you is great for troubleshooting audio problems and, you know, with the scope. And there's lots of nice little tricks that it has there, and you can tell it was developed by someone for himself, you know, for repairs, and it's great for that. But yeah, it's very, very handy for the memory tests and stuff like that, and it's effectively it's more or less just a boot block in itself. So when you put the disk in the drive and it boots, it takes, I'd say, less than 2 seconds to load. It's brilliant.
Excellent.
Yeah, because the operating system's ruled out altogether, you know, so it uses the bare minimum it needs to work, which is, you know, why it has that funky look about it, but it's a great bit of software. Yeah,
and it's really easy to use as well. I mean, I was up and running in just a couple of seconds. I was able to figure out what I needed to do and how to do it. Okay, C64 Yourself is a project that's been put online at c64.superdefault.com. And if you go there, you can upload any image off your modern computer, and it'll convert it into a Commodore 64 like palette. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, I've seen some people using it on Twitter and stuff like that. Or, you know, if you were on a forum for a Commodore 64, you could do your profile picture with it or something. Yeah, it's good fun.
I started work on an AVEX script for doing that to the Spectrum palette, because the C64 palette's quite distinctive and recognizable, and the Spectrum is a similar idea. It's because of how the hardware is done, it's really sort of bizarre way of working, and you can, you know, it means there are all sorts of artifacts and stuff like that. But I started that. I must finish that now and maybe do a C64 one as well. But that was supposed to be a plug-in for Personal Paint that I'd never finished. On the list, definitely. Yeah, the never-ending list.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
But yeah, because there's some nice effects, and the Spectrum hardware was a bit funky with the color palette, so you know, that fascinated me in itself.
Yeah, you know, now that you mention it, you can tell a specky game or a specky screenshot, you know. Yeah,
because it doesn't have a graphics chip to speak of. You know, it's very, very rudimentary. So, you know, the Commodore 64 and the 8-bit Ataris, and then of course the Amiga, they had various capabilities of graphics hardware. Whereas the Spectrum is more or less done by CPU. It's very, very simple stuff. And so basically you've got tiles, and each tile can only use 2 colors. And so where you've got things that aren't tile based, like a moving character, you get these sort of square edges around it. And it's like a really badly compressed JPEG or something, you know, it's how it handles the color. But it's like you say, a unique Spectrum thing.
The Specky was actually my first computer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we played Jetpack on it to death, and then we moved on to the Commodore 64 after that, yeah. Okay, so on AmigaLove.com, which is my favorite forum at the moment for Amiga, it's just absolutely beautiful. There's a review of Marble Madness, and it's well worth checking out. It was put up there by Shot 97, Shot 79, I forget. But anyway, it's a really thorough review. He goes through the levels. He's got loads of really nice screenshots and everything in it. It's a really enjoyable read. So I went back to Marble Madness, which I had played before with the joystick and sort of, didn't really take to it. But I tried it this time with a mouse based on his suggestion. It's a much better game with a mouse. And it's a really nice write-up. So the link will be there in the show notes, and it's a nice Sunday read if you want it.
Absolutely, yeah. I used to like that as well. And yet it's a totally different game when you play with the mouse. Okay, my discovery is a website, opengameart.org, and this is kind of what it says on the label. It's basically a site that people can upload their artwork to for other people to use, and it's mostly open source or Creative Commons licensed, so you can use it for your for anything basically. I've used it for prototyping games and things that even if you don't want to use the graphics in the final thing, for just if you want to like find a wizard or find something.
Gay Mart.
Anyway, that's Open Game Art, not Open Gay Mart. Just clearing that up for Jarlath there.
But just like I said, I'm not English. English is not my native language. So.
Oh God. Well, that's the first time I've thought of that one. Or first I've been told that. Yeah, absolutely.
You're good. Don't worry about it.
Oh dear. But anyways, it's Open Game Art, a great website full of graphics of this. They're 2D, they're 3D models. There's, lots of different tile-based 2D. Sort of side-scrolling, top-scrolling, icons. There's all sorts of stuff on there, and even sound effects and animations. And it's really, really a great resource for anyone who's looking to start making games.
Cool. That is fantastic.
But it's particularly good for me because I don't really have an artistic bone in my body. So, I'm writing code and basically the graphics look like they were drawn by a 4-year-old. And so something like this where I can just take just convert the palettes of whatever, it's not Amiga specific. So usually there's some, palette conversion to be done. And then, I can throw them in and then it looks like, look, there's amazing artwork. And it's a great resource.
I was in a chat room, a Linux chat room, and I was speaking to a John Euler, UHLER, and the subject of Amiga somehow came up. And he was saying that when he was in the military, the Amiga was everywhere. It was almost exclusively Amiga all across the board, which I thought was really fascinating because we've heard of it always in the home market or in media. So military is a new one.
And I think NASA also used them.
Yes, that's right.
For some sort of telemetry.
Yeah, they used
stuff,
Amigas 2000 and 4000.
And I saw recently someone had posted up an old a CT scanner or something like that. Some big old medical equipment, or maybe some sort of scanner anyway. And the internals are based on an Amiga 4000, which was a nice surprise.
And also actually an IRC, I need to say thank you to Rick C123 who popped into the Amiga Ireland chat room to offer some code and tips to make some changes to the website. So I'd actually been working on a plugin to change the way posts are routed because I want the podcast to come up where it does currently, but I want to start basically a monthly gaming competition. Pick a game, maybe send in our best scores or times or whatever the competition is. So I was creating this plugin that was going to do everything by the book and was going to take a bit of work, and he came in with some very handy shortcuts and saved me an awful lot of time. So yeah, thanks Rick C123.
Community news and events. Right, so recently there's been a Silesia Party 2017 in Poland, and it is actually a great C64 party with lots of good demos, lots of good graphics, and lots of good music. And the link will be in the show notes if you're interested in C64 demo scene.
Lovely. And also the Nova Party is the Sundown replacement, and you can visit novaparty.org. And the 23rd to 25th of June, which has passed, is when it ran, so you'll probably be able to catch up on photographs and stuff like that and see what it was like. And it took place in Budleigh, Salterton in England. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but close enough.
Possibly Budleigh, but I don't know myself, so...
The rally bicycles, or it ended in Leigh. Yeah.
There you go. Okay, so upcoming events. Right, we've got the Data Storm Party, which is a yearly event. I think it used to be every 6 months, but it's a yearly event now, and it's every summer in Gothenburg in Sweden, or every sort of end of every summer. I think that's the first weekend in September. The Swedes get a lot of these parties, don't they?
Scandinavians got a lot of them.
Yeah. But anyway, that'll be a good one to check out if you're up the Gothenburg direction. And Gothenburg itself is a lovely place. I'll just throw that in there.
Seems like a good party actually coming down there as well.
Okay, so we'll move on to the sports desk.
Goal! Yes.
And news from the ASL, the Amiga Super League. We got some news from Playavelli, as always. We've got his updates. So, Nesteroid has finally been dethroned after 3 titles in a row. And Playavelli is back on... Yes, poor Nesteroid. But Playavelli is back on top now. He's the former champion there. So that took 20 matches and 50 points.
Wow, jeez.
Yeah, it's a bit of a marathon run. But so Bobby Bobras from Poland, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, was in second, and Nesteroid came third. Amiga Super League 2, Andib from Denmark got promoted back to ASL 1, and Amando Jimenez and Basto from Spain and Poland, there respectively, are also got promoted. ASL 3, 4 and 5, they were well frequented, and they had enough sign-ups to create a 6th division for July. So as they do every year, July and August is going to be combined into one season. Yeah, presumably because things get a bit quiet in summer with holidays and whatnot. So the Wednesday Fun Cups are still running great. This is a sort of a one, small independent cups that are run, and anyone can sign up for them and play them every week. So on the coming Wednesday, they've got a clan competition, which will be where 3 players join together and their teams are to collect points together, and so they compete against other teams that way. And it's a theme of Game of Thrones for this, so it's a game of SWAS, and they have a nice little logo made up there, which is as you can expect, it's a Game of Thrones logo with some nice pixelated heads on it.
Yeah, it looks good.
And then we've got the World Cup, the Sensible Soccer World Cup coming up this year in Budapest. So we've been mentioning that before, and it's getting close. That's the end of this month now, so a couple of weeks now to get in. So they've got 50 players so far from 8 different nations, and that will take place on the 29th and 30th of July. Once again, thanks again to Playavelli from sensiblesoccer.de for all the updates.
Lovely.
So we move on to the Ask Amiga section.
Go!
A couple of questions that have been posted on the Ask Amiga website. This question involves a hardware problem, and it's an Amiga 600 that has been having problems with stability after recap and repair. Now, these things, this was referred to earlier as Jarlath was saying, and Keir Fraser's sys test was used for testing the memory, and they all seemed to be fine. These kind of problems can sometimes be hard to diagnose without actually having the machine in front of you. But my gut feeling for this is maybe an issue with the power supply, because most of the capacitors in the Amiga are only there for cleaning up the power supply, and if you've got a good power supply, you don't even need them to be working. So I think it might be more of a coincidence, but that the capacitors in the power supply are failing rather than the Amiga itself. So I think it's worth bearing that in mind, because it's the power supplies have capacitors in them, and they take a beating over their lifetime. Now they tend to be much better quality and much better rated than the ones in the computer itself, but they do eventually die, as all capacitors do as well. So, and at this stage, 25-30 years, they're starting to show their age. So, the power supply might not be putting out power that's as clean or as pure as it used to be, and this can lead to problems when certain chip functions are accessed, or when certain combination of things are carried out. It just leads to noise, which can trip up the computer or be seen as graphical glitches or that kind of thing. So this would be my suspicion, but I'd like to have the machine in front of me and stick a scope on the power supply to see if there's any noise in it and see what it's doing. But that would be my first instinct.
That's very interesting. I hadn't thought outside of the main board.
Yeah, and like I said, they're the big old through-hole capacitors generally in the power supply, and it does need to be recapped every so often, but not to the same kind of rotting your motherboard extent that the 600, 1200 and 4000 need.
And Rob, are you doing any repairs at the moment, or I can well imagine your hands are full?
My hands are very, very full at the moment. I've no repairs going on, but I have a sort of it's a top secret project, which isn't really top secret, with a friend of mine, and it's to move the ROM sockets out and away from underneath the mediator so that he can use a fast ATA board and an Intellivision AGA and a mediator all together without any kind of black magic. So it's a little circuit board and that's basically what I've been working on the last while. So it's under testing at the moment, so it's not a thing as of yet, but early signs are good. So if you just watch this space, maybe for the next episode.
Ooh, cool.
Great.
But that's about it. I don't have any repairs in at the moment other than my own pile of machines. So and they're on the long finger.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Okay, let's move on to our poll.
Okay.
So last time we asked, do you code on your Amiga or Commodore? And there were 4 options and we got 65 voters in. So thanks everybody who voted. And at the top at 34% of the votes, just a little, I dabble. 25% was no, but I'd like to learn. 22%, yes, I code quite a bit. And 20%, not me, no sir. So it's nice to see actually the dabblers. I like to see that.
Absolutely, because that's what can in the future come into something, even if it's like a little game or a little tool or something like that can be change other people's worlds.
Yeah, there's a board I saw online at one point. It's a little e-ink display and it gets driven by was it a Raspberry Pi? I forget. But anyway, I wanted to what I wanted to do is create an AREX script so that Wookiee chat room chat would get displayed on the e-ink display, so I could turn off the main monitor if I wanted to, but keep monitoring the IRC room. I thought it'd be a lovely little project, and it's the hardware side more that's kind of slowing me down with voltages and stuff.
Sure, get in touch with me.
Cool.
I'd be able to give you a hand. I had a little LCD in the front of my Amiga 1200. I used to show it had a rotating page, and it had your basically the time, and then any unread emails that you had on the machine. And I also had a TV card on my mediator, and it would show what the current channel was. So when it was hooked up with a remote receiver, and you just put the TV full screen, it was actually very usable in my college dorms.
Rob, if you want, we can set up a shop on the Amiga Ireland website, for your products, because they're actually really cool.
I agree.
20-year-old prototypes, yeah.
They're really cool. Yeah. I might order the e-ink screen, but put your address on it and get it sent.
Well, I'd be interested to see what that's all about. Yeah. Sounds good though.
Cool. Okay, I'll definitely ping you about that again.
We've got another poll, and this one goes with which documentaries have you seen or plan to see? And the first one is Viva Amiga. Next one is Bedrooms to Billions, the Amiga Years. The Commodore Story, Changing the World 8 Bits at the Time. It's from December 2017. Demo Scene, The Art of the Algorithm. And next one is Demo Scene Documentary. BBS, the documentary, Europe in 8 bits, Kim Justice, the rise and fall of the Commodore Amiga, and the last one is History of the Commodore Amiga 1992. All of them will be in the show notes, of course, the links. We encourage all of you to take part. Next we move on to listener feedback. As always, you can leave comments on our website or social media or our email. The email will be in the show notes. And here are some of the comments. Orochimaru on Reddit says,
I used to code in BASIC on the C64. Now I'm learning 6502 machine language. My goal is to make a demo in a game. I use Vice and Kick Assembler.
Rilo on the same subject says,
I don't code on the C64 itself often. Sometimes a little Simon's Basic to create graphics I want to use in my demos. For the rest, I'm using Kick Assembler for compiling and Vice and C64 debugger for testing. So thanks for your comments, guys.
Thank you very much.
And that's all from us for this episode. This day 2 weeks, we have an interview with the creator of Snoop DOS, Eddie Carroll, and it's going to be a cracker. I'm looking forward to that.
Well, definitely, yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
The music was by Virtual Dimensions and banjo guy Ollie. We're going to play out with Cyborg Jeff's Power Glove album. Thanks again to Cyborg Jeff for his kind permission to use it. Guys, it was nice chatting with you as well, and thanks everyone for listening. See you next time.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you very much. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
I used to code in BASIC on the C64. Now I'm learning machine or 650.
Actually, he didn't say that.
Okay, right.